Usually when we talk about building a career, there's this expectation of like a very specific kind of physics.
Right.
It operates almost like gravity. You put in the hard work, you demonstrate your competence, you wait your turn, and naturally you just step up to the next rung on the ladder.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental law of the modern workplace, or, well, at least it has been for the last century.
Yeah, it's a very linear, very comforting equation for most people. The implicit promise is that, performance equals upward momentum,
Yeah.
and that the architecture above you is actually sturdy enough to support your climb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But imagine you are climbing that ladder right now. You're doing everything right. You reach your hand up for the next rung, and your hand just grabs empty air. The rung just isn't there. In fact, you look up, and the entire middle section of the ladder is just gone. You're left hanging there, looking down, wondering if it's somehow your fault that you can't seem to move forward. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking you on a pretty mind-bending exploration of a workplace reality that you're likely feeling every single day, even if you haven't been quite able to put a name to it yet.
We're pulling our insights today from a really illuminating research paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. The paper is titled, The Architecture of Work is Collapsing. Most organizations are still building ladders.
That word collapsing, it caught my attention immediately. I mean, it sounds catastrophic, but the data in this paper completely backs it up. The traditional career ladder hasn't just evolved into something slightly different, it has structurally collapsed.
Right.
I want to hit you with some starting numbers from the research that paint a very stark picture. According to 2025 Gallup data, looking at the window between, say, 2013 and today, the average manager's span of control.
Meaning the actual number of people reporting directly to them?
Right, exactly. That number has jumped from 8.2 to 12.1. That is a 50% increase in team size for a single manager.
And, that is just the structural change. The behavioral change is even more telling. Those same managers, the ones now overseeing 12 people, they spend 46% of their time doing individual contributor work rather than actually leading their teams.
Wow.
Yeah, they're caught in this bizarre hybrid state of doing the ground level work while simultaneously trying to manage a small army.
Which frames exactly why this deep dive is so critical for you, our listener. Whether you're a manager who is feeling completely burned out trying to do half of your old job while managing a massive new team, or you're an individual contributor wondering why your career path suddenly feels like a dead end, well, this is the blueprint for what is actually happening behind the scenes at your company.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why is this happening right now? I mean, the paper doesn't suggest that every CEO in the world held a secret meeting and decided to break the corporate structure on the same day.
No secret meetings.
There have to be underlying mechanics driving this shift, right?
There are. The paper identifies 3 massive converging forces that are acting as the catalyst here. First, you have the rapid integration of artificial intelligence, which is suddenly capable of automating the basic coordination and supervision tasks that used to be, well, the bread and butter of a human middle manager.
Okay, so AI taking the admin load.
Exactly. Second, there are intense compounding cost pressures in the current economic environment, just forcing companies to really scrutinize their overhead. And third, there's the sheer necessity for operational speed.
Right.
Traditional hierarchical approval chains, where a simple decision has to travel up 4 levels of management for a signature and then back down, they're entirely too slow to survive in today's market.
So organizations are essentially being crushed from the top and the bottom, which is forcing them to flatten out.
Yes, and Dr. Westover calls this specific phenomenon architectural compression. But what's fascinating here is that the research identifies 2 very distinct flavors of this compression. And mixing them up is where companies are making just catastrophic mistakes. The first type is cost-driven delayering. This is the brute force approach. A company just fires a swab of middle managers to save money on salaries.
Yikes.
Yeah. They erase the boxes on the organizational chart, but they don't actually change the fundamental workflows or the underlying processes that those managers were responsible for.
I picture that like yanking out the middle floors of a skyscraper to save on heating bills, but expecting the elevator to still run smoothly. I mean, you still need to get your people and your projects to the top floor, but now there's just this gaping hole in the infrastructure.
That visual captures the problem perfectly. The work doesn't magically disappear just because the title did. And unfortunately, this brute force method is the dominant trend right now. A 2024 analysis of Fortune 500 restructurings found that a staggering 78% of them explicitly cited cost reduction as the primary goal of their flattening efforts.
78%. That's wild. Contrast that with the second flavor of compression. The research calls it capability-driven compression, right?
Right. This is the sustainable approach. This happens when an organization redesigns its work systems around AI and new technologies first. They take a really hard look at what their technology can handle autonomously. They redesign the workflows to leverage that, and then the management layers naturally reduce as a consequence of that new efficiency.
Oh, I see.
The flattening is a byproduct of better capabilities, not the primary goal.
But I want to stay with the negative side of this for a moment, that cost-driven delayering. Because if you just yank out those middle floors of the skyscraper without redesigning the work, the organizational fallout has to be massive.
Is.
The paper notes that decision velocity actually slows down when companies do this. That feels completely backwards to me. The whole excuse for flattening an organizational chart is always that it will make the company more agile, and faster.
Yeah, it's a very common paradox. When you remove a management layer without formally reassigning the decision rights that lived in that layer, you create a vacuum of authority. Suddenly, nobody knows who is actually allowed to approve a new vendor contract or authorize a capital expenditure.
Right, everyone's just looking around at each other.
Exactly. A decision that used to take 3 days to pass through a middle manager now takes 3 weeks while it bounces around an unclear horizontal approval chain. Everyone is terrified of making the wrong call, so everything requires an endless series of consensus meetings.
And so the coordination costs just skyrocket. You have individual contributors who are suddenly drowning in cross-functional meetings trying to sort out dependencies that, well, a middle manager used to handle for them.
And the financial impact of that is measurable. The data shows companies that execute cost-driven delayering see their overall productivity drop by 8 to 12% in the year following the restructuring.
Wow. That 8 to 12% drop probably wipes out whatever salary money they saved by firing the middle managers in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
But the paper dives into the human cost of this too. Dr. Westover introduces a term for it that just stopped me in my tracks. Structural gaslighting.
Yes. Structural gaslighting occurs when a company's official career architecture continues to promise vertical promotion based on individual performance, but the actual on-the-ground reality requires complex horizontal capability.
So they're pointing to a ladder that doesn't exist while evaluating you on your ability to navigate a web.
Exactly.
I have to push back on this a little bit, though. If we are talking about a true high performer, someone who has been a rock star at the company for years, shouldn't they just be able to adapt to a flatter structure? The research indicates these top performers are at an incredibly high risk of failing or quitting when this structural gaslighting happens. Why wouldn't a talented person just figure out the new web?
Well, we have to look at the mechanics of why they were high performers under the old system. In a traditional hierarchy, those individuals succeeded precisely because they mastered a very specific set of vertical skills.
Okay, like what?
Like, they knew exactly how to manage their relationship with a direct boss. They operated flawlessly within a very clearly defined, siloed scope of work. They understood the unwritten rules of vertical escalation when a problem arose.
So they won the game because they were playing by the rules of the ladder.
Right. Now, thrust that same individual into a compressed horizontal environment. Suddenly, they have to build consensus across 5 different departments to launch a project, but they have zero formal authority over any of those departments.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It is. The organization demands they influence without authority, but provides no training on how to actually do that. They face a sudden competence crisis. They haven't lost their underlying talent. The organization simply changed the fundamental definition of what success looks like overnight.
And the data supports this, right?
Yeah, Zenger-Folkman's 2023 data highlights the severity of this. 64% of fast-tracked executives, the supposed rising stars, fail in these newly compressed setups.
64%. A 64% failure rate for top talent is just a crisis. So if the cost-driven approach is causing this much damage, let's pivot to the companies that are actually getting this right. How do you execute capability-driven compression without burning out your best people and grinding decisions to a halt?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the solution starts with fundamentally deconstructing how we think about the act of management itself. The research suggests categorizing management work into 3 distinct buckets, and then treating each bucket differently.
Okay, what's bucket 1?
Bucket one is administrative coordination. This is the scheduling, the daily task assignment, the progress tracking, the compliance reporting.
Basically the paperwork, the stuff that keeps managers at their desks at 7 p.m.
Exactly. That entire bucket is highly automatable using current AI capabilities. Bucket two is performance assessment and feedback. Now that is partially automatable. AI can seamlessly gather the quantitative performance metrics, lines of code written, sales calls made, error rates. But you still absolutely need a human being to contextualize that data and deliver nuanced qualitative coaching.
Right, which leaves bucket 3.
Strategic direction and motivation, making complex, ambiguous trade-offs, navigating sensitive interpersonal dynamics on a team. That requires a human, period.
Yeah.
AI cannot do it.
So the smart organizations are systematically letting AI handle bucket 1, which frees up the human capacity to actually focus on buckets 2 and 3.
That's it.
The research details a 2023 case study from MasterCard that maps this out perfectly. They integrated an AI platform across their entire technology organization. But instead of using AI to just write code, they used it to take over all the task assignment, resource allocation, and daily progress tracking.
The mechanism is what's important there. The AI analyzed project scopes, matched those requirements to individual employee skill profiles, generated the daily task lists, and automatically pinged people for status updates.
It completely changed how I think about automation. AI isn't replacing the manager, it's replacing the manager's clipboard.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Because the human managers were no longer spending half their day manually updating spreadsheets or assigning basic tasks, MasterCard was able to comfortably expand the manager's span of control from 9 direct reports to 14. They eliminated 2 whole management layers in the process.
And it worked.
But the most surprising metric to me was the impact on the employees. MasterCard actually improved the time to promotion for high performers by 23%.
On the surface, that sounds contradictory. I mean, you have fewer management layers to be promoted into, and each manager has more people to look after. How do promotions speed up?
It's because the bottlenecks were removed, right?
That and those human managers finally had the bandwidth to actually coach and develop their people. When a manager isn't acting as a glorified schedule enforcer, they can dedicate real time to mentoring a high performer and getting them ready for advanced responsibilities.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the employee navigating this new, flattened organization. If the latter is gone, and the company has successfully eliminated 2 layers of middle management, how do you advance?
Right.
I mean, the traditional path of chasing the next title isn't viable anymore. How do you grow your career and increase your compensation?
You have to shift your entire mindset. You have to go horizontal, not vertical. The companies succeeding in this new era are changing the fundamental logic of career progression. They are shifting away from title advancement and moving toward contribution range expansion.
Okay, contribution range.
The T-Mobile talent architecture restructuring in 2022 is a prime example of this. They explicitly abandoned the traditional promotion-based progression model.
Wow. I can just imagine an employee hearing that their company is killing promotions and immediately panicking, thinking they will never get a raise again. How did T-Mobile prevent a mass exodus of their talent?
Well, they replaced the vertical title bump with a contribution matrix. In the system, your compensation and your perceived value to the company aren't tied to acquiring a vice president title. They are tied to your operational range.
And how did they measure that?
T-Mobile began measuring this range across 3 specific dimensions. First, your deep functional expertise. Second, your stakeholder management range, which is how well you build consensus. And third, the breadth of your business context.
Let's break down that third one, the breadth of business context. How does a company actually measure that in a performance review? What does a worker have to do to prove they have it?
It is about demonstrating that you can apply your skills outside of your original silo. During a performance cycle, an employee doesn't just say, I managed 3 more people this year. Instead, they prove that they successfully solved a problem that impacted the consumer division, then adapted that solution for the enterprise division, and navigated the regulatory hurdles of the wholesale division.
Oh, I see.
They are compensated for their agility and their ability to contextualize problems across the entire business landscape.
So you think of it less like climbing a ladder and more like scaling a rock climbing wall. You might have to move laterally to the left or diagonally, or sometimes even take a step down to find the right handhold before you can move up. You are building a portfolio of varied experiences rather than just waiting in line for your boss's job.
The retention metrics from T-Mobile prove that this horizontal matrix works when implemented correctly. Following this shift, they saw their high performers stay 31% longer.
31%.
Yeah, and even more critically, they reduced the time to competence for new complex roles by 40%. They built a workforce of adaptable problem solvers by rewarding the exact horizontal skills that their new architecture required.
But if you are actively pushing people to work horizontally across the company, that implies you also have to change how decisions are made. I mean, you can't have a flat organization of agile problem solvers if every single contract still has to be routed up to the CEO for a signature.
No, absolutely not. You have to deliberately distribute authority. The traditional corporate assumption was always that seniority inherently equals better judgment. But in a compressed architecture, concentrating authority at the top creates massive systemic bottlenecks.
Right.
The research highlights that decision quality is actually much more correlated with two different factors: your proximity to the relevant information and your frequency of making that specific type of decision.
That tracks perfectly. The procurement specialist who negotiates software licenses every single Tuesday undoubtedly knows more about the red flags in a vendor contract than the senior executive who only reviews a software purchase once a quarter.
Exactly. Mayo Clinic provides a brilliant case study for this specific transition. In 2023, they undertook a massive restructuring of clinical decision authority within their hospital operations. They moved away from a traditional hierarchy and implemented what they call domain-based authority.
Wait, so if a clinical team needs to change a standard care protocol or invest in a new piece of equipment, they just do it without asking the hospital administrators. How does that work on the floor without descending into total chaos?
It works because of carefully designed guardrails. Decisions are no longer routed to senior executives sitting in an administrative wing. They are made by the clinician with the closest physical proximity to the patient and the highest specialization for that specific issue, regardless of their seniority title.
Okay, but what keeps it safe?
The guardrail is data transparency. As long as the frontline team is operating within clearly defined budgetary and safety parameters, which are actually monitored by AI, they have full autonomy to execute the decision.
And what were the results?
Clinical decision speed improved by a remarkable 47%. They simultaneously reduced administrative overhead by 34%, and they maintained all of their stringent patient safety outcomes.
Incredible.
By pushing authority down to the people with the most immediate information, the entire system became dramatically faster and more efficient.
Okay, so we've talked about horizontal movement, but eventually someone does have to move into a senior leadership role. What if an organization has to move someone up the hierarchy, but they've eliminated the middle layers? You're basically asking an employee to jump over two missing rungs of the ladder all at once. How do they survive that jump without becoming part of that 64% failure statistic we talked about?
It requires a complete overhaul of how we approach leadership training. The old ladder system functioned because it gave you the luxury of time. You spent 3 years at level 1, 3 years at level 2, slowly absorbing the complexity of the business.
Right.
When you compress the structure, you lose that time. Therefore, organizations have to replace time-based development with intensity-based development.
Intensity-based. What does that actually look like in practice?
Let's look at Schneider Electric's 2022 initiative. They condensed their leadership structure from 6 levels down to 4. To prepare a regional manager to step into a country leader role, which is a jump that used to take years of intermediate steps, they created a 90-day intensive passage acceleration program.
A 90-day boot camp. What exactly are they doing for 3 months?
They are completely immersed in the friction and complexity of the role they are about to take on. The company ran highly realistic, simulated cross-functional projects.
Like what kind of projects?
For example, they would throw a simulated multi-region supply chain crisis at a candidate and force them to negotiate a resolution across 3 different departments, all while managing a simulated profit and loss statement.
Wow, so real pressure.
Very real. They embedded these candidates in high-level business unit reviews and surrounded them with intensive executive coaching every 2 weeks to unpack their decision-making process.
So they let them practice the jump and experience the pressure of the horizontal web before they have to make the leap for real.
And the outcomes were phenomenal. They achieved a 91% success rate for executives promoted through this program. That is up from a 67% success rate before they even compressed the structure. By explicitly scaffolding the jump with high-intensity simulations, they built incredibly resilient leaders.
Okay, so Schneider proved you can train people to survive the jump. But training is really only half the battle here. Even if I know how to do the horizontal work, why would I want to?
Yeah, that's the real challenge.
Right. because we have spent 100 years treating the vertical ladder as the ultimate status symbol.
Hmm.
If you take away the vice president title and you tell people they can't climb up anymore, how are these companies keeping people motivated?
You have to fundamentally shift the source of workplace meaning. You have to move away from hierarchical meaning, the idea that my work matters because I have a fancy title on my door, and replace it with contribution meaning. The idea that my work matters because of the tangible impact it has on the real world.
Okay.
Kaiser Permanente tackled this beautifully in 2023. They had a large administrative staff dealing with wider spans of control and significantly fewer promotion opportunities, and their internal engagement metrics were plummeting.
How did they fix the engagement drop without just handing out fake titles?
They physically connected the administrative staff to the purpose of their work. They instituted a program where administrative personnel were sent to observe live clinical settings 1 day a quarter.
Whoa.
Yeah, staff members who spent their days processing paperwork and never saw a patient were suddenly watching, in real time, how their administrative efficiency directly impacted care delivery and patient outcomes right on the hospital floor.
They closed the loop for them. They let them see the actual mechanism of their impact.
Exactly. And the internal metrics responded immediately. Employee engagement went up 28%. Process speed went up 41%. It turns out that witnessing the real-world impact of your labor is a vastly more powerful and sustainable motivator than, a slightly better job title on your LinkedIn profile.
But none of this, not the MasterCard AI integration, not the T-Mobile horizontal pay matrix, not the Kaiser purpose-driven work, none of it matters if the company treats these structural changes like a state secret.
Transparent communication is the final, non-negotiable component of all of this. You cannot change the fundamental rules of gravity in the workplace and not tell the astronauts.
Yeah.
Unilever proved the value of this with their Careers Reimagined campaign in 2023. When they reduced their organizational layers, they didn't just quietly send out a corporate memo. They ran a comprehensive, multi-month internal campaign explicitly comparing the old vertical career paths to the new horizontal ones.
So they showed their work?
Right. They showed concrete, granular examples of how compensation, skill development, and career advancement would function in the new architecture. As a result, 78% of their employees reported clearly understanding the new paths, compared to just 31% in past restructurings where the communication was vague.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening right now, it means it is time to audit your own workplace. Take a hard, objective look at the reality around you. Is your company genuinely redesigning work around new capabilities? Are they giving you the AI tools to handle the administrative busy work, rewarding your horizontal problem-solving across departments, and pushing decision-making authority down to you? Or are they just executing cost reduction in disguise, firing the middle managers and expecting you to do 3 jobs at once for the exact same pay?
Recognizing that distinction is critical for your own career survival.
The ladder is dead. The rungs have been pulled out. It is time to stop waiting for a vertical promotion that might not structurally exist anymore. Instead, start building that rock-climbing wall portfolio of horizontal skills. Learn how to partner effectively with AI, learn how to translate complex problems across different departments, and become the kind of agile generalist who naturally thrives in a flattened architecture.
And this raises an important question, one that really builds on everything Dr. Westover's research points to about the future. If AI is absorbing all of the routine administrative tasks, and the most successful companies are completely restructuring themselves to reward horizontal capability, people who can adapt fluidly across consumer, enterprise, wholesale, and beyond, what is the future for the deep, hyper-specialized human expert?
That is a fascinating point.
If the new post-ladder world heavily prizes the agile generalist who can translate between human teams and AI platforms across various contexts, will deep, narrow human specialization become a liability? Or, conversely, will true human specialization become an ultra-rare, highly compensated luxury in a sea of generalists? As we continue to rebuild the architecture of work, we are going to have to decide where the true, irreplaceable value of human intelligence really lies.
And on that incredibly provocative note, we are going to wrap up this deep dive. Whether you are one of the leaders actively building this new architecture, or an employee just trying to navigate the web, keep your eyes on the horizon, not just on the empty space above you. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us and for your time today. We will catch you next time.